KJA Global Channel. The Political System and Me. Series 3. Institutions, Power, Rights, and Accountability. Episode 25. My Constitution and Separation of Powers. The Architecture of Freedom. A constitution is not merely a document. A constitution is a decision. It is a society deciding, in writing, what it will never allow again. It is a nation taking the raw and unpredictable force of human ambition and building boundaries around it, so power cannot easily become tyranny. It is the people saying, "We know what leaders are capable of, including the best of them. So we will not rely on goodness alone. We will build a structure that restrains even the good because it must also restrain the dangerous." I used to think a constitution was something distant, like a flag or a national anthem. Respectable, symbolic, and too technical for ordinary citizens. But a constitution is not distant. It is present in your school, your taxes, your vote, and the police power used against you. It determines whether property can be taken without process, whether a court can stop an unlawful order, and whether an emergency remains temporary. This is where our question begins. Who may exercise power? What may they do? What must they never do? And who can stop them when they cross the line? The Constitution is the hidden engine of daily life. If constitutional limits are weak, every right is fragile. If constitutional safeguards are real, society can survive even bad leaders because the system can restrain, review, and replace them. Constitutions matter most not when power is calm, but when power becomes hungry. Freedom is not created by hope alone. Freedom is built. And what is built well can stand. Many people assume constitutions are written to empower governments. But governments usually find ways to empower themselves. A constitution exists primarily to organize, limit, divide, and make public power answerable. A constitution is the people's long-term memory in legal form. It is society learning from past wounds and turning those lessons into safeguards. The system reveal is constitutional limits and separation of powers. A constitution is the people's shield against power. It answers who rules and who can stop them. In plain language, the hidden mechanism is constitutional limits and separation of powers. Every political system has power. The decisive question is whether power can be stopped. If one person, one party, one institution, or one security apparatus cannot be stopped, then society is not governed. It is owned. This is the purpose of separation of powers. Not academic elegance. Practical survival. No one holds everything. No one decides everything. No one controls everything. No one is beyond challenge. The legislature makes laws, approves public money, represents citizens, and questions government. The executive administers laws, delivers services, conducts policy, and manages the state. The judiciary interprets law, protects rights, resolves disputes, and reviews unlawful power. Each branch must have real authority. Each must also face real limits. Separation without capacity creates weakness. Capacity without restraint creates domination. Checks and balances make separation real through legislative scrutiny, judicial review, lawful administration, transparent appointments, independent audit, removal procedures, elections, public records, and remedies. Power must negotiate, justify, and accept review. Delay can sometimes frustrate. But in constitutional government, some delay is the time required for evidence, participation, disagreement, and restraint. Absolute power is not only dangerous, it is addictive. Leaders who begin by bypassing one safeguard for convenience often discover that unchecked power makes every future obstacle look illegitimate. This is why a constitution must also create a constitutional culture. A constitution lives only if citizens, officials, judges, legislators, journalists, teachers, and security institutions carry its limits in their minds. Constitutional culture means accepting lawful opposition, electoral defeat, adverse court judgments, public ownership of state resources, and the truth that no leader is the nation itself. A written constitution without constitutional culture can become an unread promise. Constitutional culture without enforceable law can become fragile custom. Durable freedom requires both. In diverse societies, federal constitutional design may offer an architecture of unity with dignity. It can divide authority between common institutions and constituent governments so that national cooperation and meaningful self-government coexist. But federal language alone proves nothing. Powers must be clear, revenue must follow responsibility, rights must remain enforceable, disputes need an impartial forum, and constitutional change cannot belong to one center alone. The hidden structure becomes traceable through the governance chain. Constitutional rule, institution, policy, budget and capacity, official action, human experience, review and correction. Constitutional rule to institution, institution to policy, policy to budget and capacity, budget and capacity to official action, official action to human experience, human experience to review and correction. Each link asks a different accountability question. Constitutional rule asks, what authority exists, what right is protected, and what limit applies? Institution asks, which body has the lawful duty to act? Is it independent enough, representative enough, and competent enough to perform that duty? Policy asks, how is the constitutional promise translated into a practical rule? Is the policy consistent with rights and open to public scrutiny? Budget and capacity ask, are money, staff, training, data, and infrastructure available? A constitutional duty without capacity can become symbolic. Official action asks, what did the responsible authority actually do? What records should exist and what reasons were given? Human experience asks, what did the citizen encounter in reality? Protection or exclusion? Service or delay? Due process or arbitrary command? Review and correction ask, who can examine the decision, hear evidence, order a remedy, and ensure compliance? A broken outcome may begin far upstream. The visible harm may be an unlawful arrest, exclusion, censorship, an unfair election rule, a missing service, or an emergency that never ends. But the deeper failure may begin with an unjust constitutional clause, an institution without independence, a policy written in secrecy, a duty without a budget, a hidden official record, a captured court, or a remedy that exists only on paper. The governance chain prevents us from reducing institutional failure to one personality. It identifies where law, design, capacity, evidence, oversight, or enforcement stopped working. When citizens and professionals can locate that break, criticism becomes more accurate and reform becomes more practical. For this episode, the principal mechanism is constitutional limits and separation of powers. The production graphic must make every link readable on a phone screen and label country-specific or proposed arrangements honestly. Under dictatorship, constitutions may exist while concentrated command controls their meaning. Information is restricted, institutions answer upward, courts may protect rulers, legislatures may approve rather than scrutinize, emergencies may become ordinary government, and challenge may carry personal risk. In a fragile democracy, formal rules may exist while patronage, weak capacity, corruption, politicization, or selective enforcement makes protection inconsistent. Elections may occur while institutions remain dependent, judgments go unenforced, and written rights remain difficult to claim. In a functioning federal democracy, authority is constitutionally distributed, common rights remain enforceable, and more than one institution can question, review, or correct harmful power. But elections or federal language do not substitute for functioning safeguards. Actual performance must be tested. The viewer should compare who decides, how authority was obtained, whether records are public, whether affected people participate, and whether lawful amendment, emergency limits, and effective remedies exist in practice. The minimum guardrails are 1. Constitutional supremacy and justiciable rights. All public authority must remain subject to the Constitution. Rights must be clear enough to guide officials and enforceable enough for courts or other lawful bodies to protect them. 2. Separation and balance of powers. Legislative, executive, and judicial functions must not be concentrated in one hand. Appointments, removal, tenure, and institutional budgets must protect independence without creating unaccountable privilege. 3. Transparent lawmaking and public records. Bills, reasons, votes, budgets, regulations, and implementation records must be accessible for meaningful scrutiny. Secret law is incompatible with accountable government. 4. Independent courts and review. Courts need lawful appointment, competence, secure tenure, ethical discipline, and authority to provide effective remedies. Judicial independence protects citizens, not judges, from accountability. 5. Lawful amendment and emergency limits. A constitution must be changeable, but not disposable. Amendment rules should permit democratic correction while preventing temporary majorities from destroying the constitutional order. Emergency powers require legal grounds, necessity, time limits, legislative and judicial review, public records, and lawful renewal. These safeguards work as a system. A right without an independent reviewer can become theater. Oversight without records cannot see. Participation without safety can expose people. Separation without capacity can paralyze government. And a remedy without enforcement does not repair the harm. Global relevance. The constitutional test applies across political labels. Who decides? What limits power? What information is public? Who participates? Who can review an unlawful decision? And whether correction is real. Myanmar relevance. Apply this lesson without treating one organization, community, institution, or proposed arrangement as the whole country. Separate existing law and operating institutions from interim arrangements, political commitments, and aspirational constitutional designs. State clearly what currently exists, what operates only in some areas, and what remains proposed. Here is the civic practice for this episode. See and ask. Ask whether your Constitution restrains power or merely decorates it. Identify one authority that appears difficult to challenge. Verify. Examine one Constitution's powers, rights, review, amendment, emergency, and federal or decentralization provisions. Compare the written rule with actual practice. Act. Apply a constitutional shield test to one public power. Identify the authority, the legal limit, the oversight body, the available remedy, the emergency rule, and the path of correction. Review. Record whether you can name the responsible institution, evidence, safeguard, or remedy, and one safe next step. Use only lawful and proportionate steps. Do not convert an educational exercise into a public accusation. A society that does not understand its constitutional architecture can be seduced by authoritarian promises. It can surrender freedom because it does not recognize the structure that protects it. This is why civic education is constitutional defense. Without civic education, a constitution becomes an unread book. Beautiful, symbolic, and vulnerable. A constitution is the cathedral of a nation's freedom. Cathedrals are not built quickly. Freedom is the same. It cannot depend on one heroic leader. It must make the nation governable without fear. When separation of powers is real, society can survive storms because the architecture holds. The principle to carry forward is this. A constitution is the people's shield against power. It answers who rules and who can stop them. Ask yourself, what part of constitutional restraint and separation of powers have I treated as normal even though it should be visible, answerable, and correctable? Good intentions depend on character. Public protection depends on institutions. In the next episode, we continue with my Parliament and policy. How laws become life. Continue the playlist, use the worksheet, and keep the practice safe, truthful, and disciplined. The system shapes our lives. Our participation shapes the system. Subscribe. Learn. Participate. Shape the future. KJA. Knowledge justifies authority.